Hey, how's it going? It's Nick here, and on today's adventure, we're mixing some more litho and relief printing. So, this one's for an exchange. I was quite busy with exchanges at the time. This one is for an exchange called On Loss. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for now, I think the plan is to do a CMYK stone litho and a little bit of lino block printing on top of that. So I'm going to go ahead, get a bunch of stones grained, and then I'm going to get them sealed up in gum so they can soak up a nice gum film while I'm waiting, so then I can draw on them and perform my acidless litho process later. So 24 hours later, after the gum's soaked in, I'm going to go ahead, rinse off that gum film, so I've kind of got a nice bare stone with a little bit of gum film sitting on the surface. And then of course, next step is to put on some registration pins. Registration always comes first when you're trying to make a multicolor print. Never neglect your registration systems. And then I'm going to use some iron oxide to just kind of transfer over my sketch. Pretty standard stuff so far. So, On Loss is a portfolio exchange that delves into the nuanced themes of loss within the tapestry of our individualized landscapes. This loss might encompass the absence of a person, a past memory, or youthful naivete, symbolized by the gradual deterioration of the natural environment. As we traverse a transformed earth, contrasting the nostalgic sentiments preserved in our photo albums, we turn to childhood photographs, igniting a collective call to action for a rejuvenated planet, an earth we strive to reclaim and preserve. With those themes in mind, I decided to make my piece about literal loss, me losing my great aunt, and a bit more of a figurative loss in that when she passed, I kind of lost the person in my life that would only speak Vietnamese to me, and just kind of the last barrier of me holding on and just kind of maintaining any semblance of fluency in Vietnamese. And so just kind of losing another part of myself with someone else kind of leaving about. And so in this piece, I kind of decided to bring a few things, kind of mixing back then life with now life. And so here I've got a bunch of tools for creation with my art self. And I've got a photograph of my great aunt and, a bowl of Vietnamese food, phone with Google Translate, and this is all going to be done with the CMYK and a stone litho process that's going to be much more realistic, just kind of the world that we live in. And I'm going to render my own hand, just kind of a reflection of myself with the Linocut style to kind of represent myself not fitting in or living up to the realistic expectations that I probably should be. And so I'm hoping that the two styles will somewhat clash with each other just to kind of juxtapose one another. I am getting better at learning Vietnamese though, taking Duolingo lessons little by little. I only do like one lesson a day, but as long as I'm learning one more word than I knew yesterday, I think that is a step in the right direction. And just kind of reclaiming what was lost is also part of the themes of this exchange. So I think it kind of works really poetically that way. And especially with this process, this kind of CMYK process, it's very tedious, and along the way you don't know if it's working or not, because once those first three layers of the print are down, it still really doesn't look like anything, and only really when you put that fourth layer down does it really start to look like something. And so it's just kind of trust the process. It looks like no progress is happening, but in reality it is. You just need to be patient until the end, and I think that's kind of how it is with learning a language. Sometimes you get stuck and you feel like you're going nowhere, but only really when you kind of look back to where you were a long time ago do you realize that you've gone a long way. So, concepts aside, it was time to execute on my plan. And so, with all of the layers drawn, at least I usually start with drawing the yellow, magenta, and cyan layers first, and then I save the black layer for last. we're going to start with the yellow layer here. And so I remove my old drawing and I replace that drawing media with a nice layer of shellac and alcohol, and that's going to be my printing base. Here I'm going to roll up with some yellow ink, and instead of doing like processed yellow, I like to do yellow ochre. It gives me a more muted color, less feeling like a computer print off and something more like a fine art read off, something a bit more vintage. So running it through the press, just this one a test print, but hey, that's yellow. It looks like something, not something great, but it looks like something. Trust in the process. And so next up, we've got the magenta layer, and here I just kind of use a darker red, something more like a carmine kind of color rather than doing like a nice magenta pure color. And with the two layers smashed together, you know, we're getting something orange. Doesn't quite look great. I mean, it kind of looks worse than it did before with just the yellow layer, but again, we just gotta trust the process. But good thing I didn't trust the process too much, because when I went to go roll up my blue layer, I kind of noticed something, that my blue layer and the blue towels on the top aren't as blue as I think they should have been. And I think somewhere halfway through the drawing process, I swapped my blue kind of map with my magenta map because I think there was a lot of overlap, and so I ended up coming back in, drawing some more, and then just kind of redoing or having to remake the blue layer, and that set me back because I think this exchange was due in like a few days, and so I was really crunching for time. It did not feel great, but mistakes happen even to the greatest of us. I've been making lithos for quite a while, and you know, I still mix up layers every now and then, you know. So with that out of the way, we're going to print the blue layer on here, and you know what? It's starting to look like something. Not a great image, not something I would want to, you know, show my class in your critique or anything like that, but it's starting to resemble something more lifelike. And that's why I always leave the black layer for the final layer, so I can go up and clean up a bunch of the lines and objects that kind of need to be cleaned up. Now that all 4 layers of the CMYK have been added to this piece of paper, it's time to go ahead and add some Linocut to this piece. And I really don't want any chatter marks in this Linocut print, because it's just going to interfere with the rest of the CMYK drawing on this print. And so first, with the registration holes on it, I'm going to print onto a piece of newsprint just to see where the print lines up. And then I'm going to come back in with my box cutter and cut out a stencil of where that print's going to be. And so this is going to be my frisket to kind of block any sort of stray ink from making its way to the paper when I print. All I need to do is put it down in between the block and the final paper, and voila, no need to wipe my block clean in between each print. I like to print with a hard timpin like this plexiglass because felts sometimes kind of are too soft, and they like to push ink into the very shallow lines that I carve. And so sometimes I find that if I print with felts, the lino block prints get a little too dark and the lines start to fill in. So hard timpin usually prevents that. Anyway, final Linocut layer really kind of seals the deal on this print. I'm really liking it so far. Now I just have to do that 20 more times. You know how it goes. Of course, there's still one more thing we have to do, and that is trim this down to be a nice full bleed print. I think that will be the cherry on top of this print. And there's no better feeling in the world than when you finish an edition and they all stack up so nice and beautifully. I could just sit around and play with all these prints all day, but there's no time for that. I need to go ahead, edition these, and get them out to the mail. So it's been about 6 months or so since that exchange. I'm finally getting around to editing this video and finally unboxing this exchange. I got this way long ago, but I haven't really opened it or seen the finished portfolio. I did get to briefly see the prints at MAPC, but I didn't look at them too hard over there. I kind of saved my surprise for the finished product. And so, let's go ahead and unbox this thing. Beautiful little photo album for the portfolio. I think I briefly remember them saying that it was going to be consolidated in like a photo album-esque kind of format. Completely forgot about that, and so this was a very nice surprise to see. I don't know, I really like this, although I really do hate the texture of like suede book cloth and like suede mat board, and so it always just gets so dirty so fast, and so it's mildly cool here, but I don't know if this is something I really want to touch for a while. Opening it up, we've got the colophon, just kind of the name of the portfolio on loss, and just kind of the description and participating artists. This is a bit glossier than I anticipated, so we're just going to switch camera views to hopefully minimize the glossier. First up, we've got what looks to be like a CMYK screen print from Zoe. Although I don't know if it's quite, pure CMYK. I think the colors have been edited a bit, kind of give it this more grungier look. Next up, we've got a print from Mandy, and I'm not quite sure what this one is. It smells like oil-based ink, maybe like a photo intaglio plate or something like that. Next up, we've got a print from Dean, and I remember talking to Dean. It's a mix of litho and some mokuhanga colors, and then they kind of cut out the front part and then kind of done this little collage-esque assemblage. And then we've got a print by Heather, and it looks like another CMYK print. I really like the negative space. It just kind of cuts through this piece. Very clean, very well done to go through all of the layers. Next up, we've got this print by Perry, and this one, it's got a little bit something extra special. I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but I can feel a blind emboss onto this print. And then when I pulled it out, I also discovered that these two little pieces in the window picture frames here are actually cutouts or windows, and then there's another print kind of attached to the back of it. So we're just kind of peering through a physical little window, which I thought was really neat. And continuing the theme of windows, this print by Kate, it's got a cutout through it, and I hope they didn't do this all by hand, because those are some clean lines. And I really like how my print, I can already see it kind of peeking through the windows there. And there we go, a nice little CMYK plus Linocut print there, and it looks like I got extra prints back, and so I'll just go ahead and take that. Next up, we've got a print by Mitchell, and not quite sure how this one was made, but it smells like oil-based ink. I'm betting it's a lithograph. I really like that nice green to yellow gradient, and then that pop of the white boards coming out behind of it, real crisp. And then we've got this print by Adrian, and this one also smells real nice and rich, very clean wiping. I'm betting this is a soft ground etching right here. Great texture when I touch this piece, all of those lines. And then here we've got a nice subtle screen print by Carl Voss. At least it smells like a screen print. Not entirely sure, never talked to him. And last, we've got a print by Ian. And this one threw me for a loop because it didn't quite smell like oil-based ink, but it definitely didn't really look like a screen print or anything like that. Turns out it was a mezzotint, and it's got this really cool blind emboss, which I missed this on the first pass over through it. I didn't realize it until I kind of touched the print and went to go flip it over. And so this is really cool. It doesn't really show up on camera like at all, but when I flip it over, you kind of see these plants over here, and I think that's super cool. Anyway, that's it for this portfolio. My thanks goes out to Tung and Maddie over at Elastic Editions for organizing this amazing exchange, and now I get to have a bunch of different artists, tiny little prints. So that's all I've got for this video. Finally working on my back catalog. I've got footage for a bunch of different videos already done and ready to go. They just need editing. And so next video, I've got a little review on Speedball fabric relief ink. And so if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.